talking about trust, technology, and transparency. So, we will talk about the importance of student assessments in health professions education. What are the gaps? How technology is being used? And how do I see the role of transparency and trust in the coming future, specifically in the next decade? And then we will try and wrap it all up and bring it all together as a summary and key lessons, of course. So, why student assessment matter? And we all know that assessments do shape what teachers teach, what and how students learn, and how success is defined. Regardless of the curriculum, regardless of the courses being offered, of the teaching and learning methodologies, the focus of the students for their learning, and to much extent, the focus of teachers on training and teaching relies on what is assessed on examinations, specifically on high stakes assessments. You may think of various competencies we know. Think of knowledge and skills versus professionalism and leadership, and also now reflect as to how much of these competencies reflect on our assessments, and do the teaching and learning by the teachers and the students reflect the importance of these competencies in the profession, or does it reflect the proportion on how much are they focused upon on assessments? And you will get the answer. Let us proceed. Also, high stakes assessments plays an important role in establishing public trust. If stakeholders see the assessment decisions on high stakes assessments being valid, being fair, being equitable, there is trust upon institutions and regulatory bodies. However, if there is less confidence on these assessment decisions, the trust of stakeholders and of public erodes very quickly. We know that assessments today struggle in many areas. Just as I said, there is a heavy focus on knowledge exams as compared to on other competencies, which may be challenging to assess, may be resource intensive, however, are also very important, if not equally important. Then there are capacity issues of faculty, of exam developers, of markers and assessors. There is fragmentation of assessment. Today we know and we aim for programmatic assessments, competency-based assessments, focusing on holistic development of our students and on holistic assessments. However, when we reflect back in many of our institutions, the assessment systems and the decisions are fragmented. We take small tests and quizzes and written examinations. Then there are clinical examinations. There may be continuous assessments. And there is pass and fail based on each exam, rather than creating a holistic profile of the candidate and deciding if the candidate is competent enough to be promoted, to be qualified, certified, given the license, or so on. And hence, because of these many issues, we see very commonly there is erosion of public trust on the assessment systems and the decisions, the outcomes it produces. With the advancement and rapid advancements of technology and artificial intelligence, the current temptation is to improve assessment systems using technology. Now we see many institutions and experts and individuals and consultants rushing towards using digital examinations for computer-based assessments, using artificial intelligence for item development, for scoring, and so on, using automations in assessments and decision making, and also using analytics for quality assurance of assessments. And there is a clear belief there the use of technology is equivalent to assessment reforms. That is, many of us believe that including technology and using technology will help us improve our assessment systems drastically. However, I would like to pose a simple warning here. Please note that digitizing weak assessment systems will only scale failure. If there is an assessment which is poorly designed and you used a computer-based system just to scale it up and introduce that assessment to more candidates more efficiently, it will only result in faster errors and more errors because the assessment itself is not designed well. The constructs of the items may not align with the curriculum or the learning outcomes, or there may be errors on the exam, or it may not reflect the weightage of the different topics or diseases or health problems. Weak standards, if there are weak standards, if quality assurance, reliability, standardization, and objectivity of assessments are not taken care of, using technology to improve the efficiency only will result in wider mistrust. And a fragile governance, a quality assurance, and accountability system will only pose amplified risk if it is scaled using digital technology. So one must bear in mind that technology does not improve assessment. It amplifies whatever already exists. If there are gaps, if there are failures, if there are inconsistencies, lackings, technology has the ability to only scale those gaps and limitations. However, if your assessment system is strong enough, it has strengths, then only technology can help you scale the strengths. I give a very simple example. Suppose if you have a mold or a template to produce a jug or a glass which has a hole in it in the bottom. If you buy any technology or machinery, however efficient it is, however expensive it is, and if you use the same mold, it will produce the same gap, more jugs and more glasses in less amount of time with those holes in the bottom. So use of technology does not equate with assessment reforms. To further elaborate on my case, I have two examples. Case number one, digitization of assessments without quality design. As I said, if you're using computer-based testing with weak assessment items, if you're using automated or screen marking with poor marking schemes or rubrics, it will only scale error, increase the bias, what automation or AI may bring into your scoring system, and ultimately it will erode validity of your assessment decisions. And efficiency without validity in this case will result in accelerated error. Example two, using AI without proper accountability and governance. AI without oversight may result in hallucinated AI-generated items where there can be content conceptual errors or hallucinations or construct irrelevance. They may not be aligned for various reasons to your learning outcomes and curriculum. Flawed assessment rubrics, the bias of the AI scoring systems themselves, and an unclear scoring criteria. In most instances, we do not know, the institutions, the administrators do not know how does the AI system use its own algorithms to score various scripts or to generate various items. So AI is not equivalent to human judgment. Artificial intelligence at this moment in time is not ready to replace human judgment. It can only support it. So My point is to first focus on the basic principles we have been talking about from the past many decades, which is getting the basics right first. Focus on validity of your assessments, reliability, and fairness of your assessments. Is your assessments content valid? Are they aligned to the agreed upon and the laid down competencies and learning outcomes? Does it align to the vision of the university and of the education? Is scoring criteria and the way students are treated are being applied consistently across contexts and across assessors and across candidates? And are we being fair and equitable to our stakeholders, specifically to our candidates? So believe me, there is no shortcut to investing the time and resources on ensuring the quality of assessments based on these three basic principles. So, what's the role of technology in assessment? We know once you have ensured the quality of your assessments, the validity, reliability, and fairness, then technology, of course, can help you scale, ensure consistency, and improve the efficiency of your assessment systems. And of course, artificial intelligence in assessment with governance and accountability can help you develop good items and marking schemes and rubric generation to score student responses, to do quality assurance, detect patterns which may be abnormal. However, their use in high-stake assessments, as I've talked about, will require caution. So the right model is a hybrid approach where AI supports content generation and scoring and analysis. However, there is human oversight, governance, and quality assurance where we, as experts, content experts, educational experts, and assessment experts, ensure content, calibration, standard setting, and the final decisions, the outcomes. AI can help us support the judgment. However, it is not yet ready to replace human judgment. So the solution is a layered approach. You build human capacity first, invest on the human resources, make sure your faculty and administrators have the right knowledge and skills and competence to develop, administer, and score assessments to produce valid and reliable results. You improve your assessment systems and then use technology to support your assessment. Get the assessment right first, then digitize. Do not do the other way around. Now we come to, after we have talked about technology, I want to talk about yet another important characteristic, specifically now and for the future for assessments, which is transparency. Now, what is transparency of assessments? Transparency is that the assessment processes, decisions, and methodologies are clearly visible, understandable, and open to scrutiny by stakeholders, which may be your students, your employers of your students, the regulatory bodies, and the public. So you need to have a very clear design as to what is the role of technology and artificial intelligence versus of human resource, what's the accountability of each, and make this information accessible to stakeholders such that they are able to understand the system. And transparency is even important in the AI age because the use of artificial intelligence in assessment introduces new challenges, because the simple processes becomes more complex. Automated scoring, item generation, AI proctoring just makes things more complex. And very commonly in the literature and on the media, we see Such decisions using AI being challenged by students and regulatory bodies just because the processes, the algorithms are not transparent, they are not clear. Many at times, even the administrators do not know how the AI is making such decisions. And hence, when you use AI, there is a chance that the assessment systems will become more opaque to both users and stakeholders, which poses a threat to transparency. How do we operationalize transparency for our assessment systems? First, one must have very clearly delineated and outlined quality assurance frameworks. How will the quality of each assessment process be done? What is the role of human experts versus using artificial intelligence? Clear accountability of different systems, clear communication to different stakeholders and to the public, independent evaluations and quality assurance of your assessment systems, methodologies, and decisions. And of course, then regulatory oversight. So these are the different steps through which any assessment system can implement or ensure transparency in its assessment processes. And now let's talk about the third important factor, trust. Trust is defined as the confidence of stakeholders, which include learners, educators, institutions, regulators, and the public in the quality of assessment decisions, which includes fairness, accuracy, and defensibility of your assessment decisions. And trust, mind you, is not an inherent property of any assessment system. Trust is an outcome shaped by multiple factors related to your assessment system. What are those factors? Of course, the basic principles. Have you focused on the validity of your assessment decisions and assessment design, the reliability of the decisions and scoring, fairness across candidates and contexts, again, the governance structure, including quality assurance and regulation, professionalism, that is the expertise and competence of your exam developers and assessors, and their integrity, how it is seen by the different stakeholders, and on top of that, transparency. Can your stakeholders, your learners in different institutions, employers, and the government, including the public, can see all of the above factors clearly? Do they have confidence on your assessment system based on these factors? And there is a very intricate role of transparency and trust. There is a relationship. So ensuring validity and reliability and fairness, you focus on the quality of your assessment systems. Transparency will make sure that this quality is visible and is understood by the stakeholders, and then you may achieve trust, which is the ultimate outcome. If there is low focus on the quality of assessments and there is high transparency, the trust is very fragile because the stakeholders can then see that quality of assessments is not focused on. A high quality assessment system, but with low transparency, where there are questions as to how technology and AI is being used, how it is regulated, how high stake assessment decisions are made, will also result or has a danger of resulting in lower trust by the stakeholders. So the ultimate key or guide is to ensure high quality of your assessment systems and ensure high transparency, good, clear communication. Make your systems open to audits and quality assurance and to regulatory bodies, which will result in sustained trust by different stakeholders. So I see in the next decade or in the coming time, trustworthiness of an assessment system becoming an important criteria. So we have been talking about validity of assessments, reliability and fairness. Now I believe is the time we also add trustworthiness of assessment systems. It will become essential in due time, very soon. And I see this because I can foresee various reasons for this. We have talked about the increased use of technology and AI has a risk of increasing the opacity of assessment decision making. We also know that now, very soon, or even today, we are dealing with new generation of learners. This new generation demands clear communication. They think that questioning and getting the right answers is their right. They just don't want to be receivers of the policies and procedures and assessment systems. They want to be partners of assessment systems. And when the assessment systems will start using scores from different tests, focusing on different competencies to make programmatic competency-based decisions, it will make the situation more complex and more opaque. And with time, we know that there is an increased public demand for transparency and shared information. Based on all these factors, I see that trustworthiness will become an important quality criterion for good assessment systems. So, up till now, we have been talking about the validity of decisions in assessment systems. However, what I see now is that there will be focus on trustworthiness of assessment systems. And to move from validity to trustworthiness, transparency of assessment systems will play a very important role. Bringing it all together. A robust assessment system should focus on, of course, the assessment standards and quality. It has to invest in developing human capacity of assessment developers, administrators, decision makers, markers, and assessors. Of course, there will be a focus on digitization, on using technology and AI. However, the use of AI needs to be governed. And yes, there will be a need to focus on transparency and clear communication to achieve the outcome of trustworthiness of assessment systems. So I see that the next decade of assessment in the near future will be principled, deliberate, and trust-centered. This brings us to the end of the presentation. Of course, I believe there is ample time for Q&A, and if you may want to get in touch further, my email address is on the screen. So I'm happy to take questions if there are any.
So we do have one question from Mona. How can you assess trustworthiness of assessment systems?
This is a very good question. And I believe the concept is, in the age of AI, the concept is new. So first is to ensure trustworthiness. And I believe first you look at the quality of your assessment systems, and then you look at how transparent is your assessment system. Are the policies and procedures made available to different stakeholders? And when I say this, I also want to say it with caution because too much sharing of information can also erode trust. So it is a very deliberate decision as to what kind of information and in what language becomes available to different stakeholders. What kind of information do you make available to your students? What kind of information and in what language becomes available to the public on your website? and what kind of information and in what language becomes available to the regulators. That will ensure trustworthiness. To assess the level of or measure trustworthiness, I think what I can now think is uh, different indicators. How many times do students appeal against student decisions or the quality of assessments? How does your different stakeholders take your assessment decisions as credible? So when your students go out and they apply for further education or for employment, how does results from your institutions, or if there are national assessments, how credible those results are being taken and used by different stakeholders nationally and internationally, globally? How do you see stakeholder and public sentiment around your assessment decisions? What is the confidence of the regulators and national bodies, regulatory bodies, on your assessment systems and assessment designs? I think these are the few indicators of the trustworthiness. Of course, this will also include the quality indicators, specifically if there are external audits or if there is regulation by experts in assessment. They will start from focusing on the measures and outcomes related to validity, reliability, and fairness. That remains equally important. I hope I've responded to your question, Mona.
There is another question from Ibrahim. Do you think we need to change our assessment methods in the era of AI?
Yes,
Yes.
of course. However, if you reflect the gaps of the assessment systems, many of those gaps were already there in the assessment systems. Technology and AI have just exposed them and have created an urgency to fix those gaps. So many of the limitations have not generated or arose because of AI, they were there. They have now just been exposed, made explicit, and now I think there is a time and an opportunity to improve our assessment systems, methodologies, and design. I agree.
Anyone else have questions? From Dr. Syed Razavi, what all modification and challenges shall we expect to face in the coming times?
We have already started to see the challenges, and we all are very much aware of it. However, I think the bigger challenge to me is not how do we change our teaching methods or our assessment systems because AI is there. To me, a more valid question and a more relevant question is how do we see the future health workforce working in the presence of such new technologies and artificial intelligence? And that to me is still largely unknown. And we need to sit down together and deliberate, because then we need to focus on developing the competencies and the skills which will be required. So we are still training or educating our future healthcare workforce based on the kind of work or problem solving we were required to do. However, the future workforce will work in a very new and quite unknown world. And this is a challenge faced globally. Wherever I attend seminars or working groups, there is a debate and there is deliberation on how the future workforce will look like. What will be the role of healthcare professionals so that we train them for that role? And the other important thing is digital competence to work with technology and to work with artificial intelligence. That's for sure, we know, is another important competence we need to build into our competency um, 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 lists and systems if we haven't done so yet. Thank you.
There's another question from Kausar. What are your views on learner involvement? Would it help enhance trustworthiness?
Yes, we now there is time, if we have not done so up till now, to have our learners um, as partners. Uh, Specifically, with AI coming in and with AI and technology exposing our assessment systems, I think this is time that we work with our candidates, we work with our students to make certain decisions, to make certain regulations, and to make certain ethical norms for our assessment systems as to what will be allowed and what will not be allowed for the candidates, and of course, for the exam developers and assessors and scorers and decision makers. It is very, very important to have this agreed upon between stakeholders.
Any other questions? Okay, there's no. So I have a question. I have AI
Okay.
background. I'm AI certified, and I'm starting to take AI governance certification now. I know AI can change. I mean, if it is built to assess the data, come up with decisions, over time, it can change that decisions. How often do we test the systems to make sure it's making the right decisions?
I would say continuously.
Yes.
Continuously. See, when you will start, to me, it's a very natural progression, just as you would do with any other new system, assessment method, or teaching method, right? You will first pilot it, then implement it. And when you implement it first, you will need a larger proportion, larger sampling to be quality assured by humans. As you develop the judgment, you will reduce the sampling. I would say probably the sampling will start after implementation from 50 or 60% of your sampling, and it may come down to 30% eventually. I'm not sure if at any point in time it will even come down to below 30%. But it is all based upon how good and rigorous AI systems and algorithms do we have in the future. And you may know it better than me.
Yeah, so that's what I was thinking. It's like you're not only assessing your students, you're also assessing the system, the AI,
Yes,
constantly,
yes,
because when the
yes.
data changes, the decisions will change, and AI can teach itself to change its decision processes. That's why AI governance is so, so very important.
Yes.
So
And
I,
in good ways and in not so good ways, right?
yes,
The AI can
yes,
change.
absolutely. It all depends on data.
Yes,
If it's good data, it gives you a good decision. If it's corrupted data, it gives you corrupted. I mean, I always use the example of vaccination, right? Here in US, there is a trend of saying vaccinations are bad, so there people are not vaccinating their children. That's bad data. If that data comes into AI is going to tell our future doctors, okay, vaccination is bad. Don't, advise. So that scares me is if we depend on AI all the time, then you have to make sure the data is correct and you have to keep watching AI is making the correct decision. So,
very good example. Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you for sharing this example.
There is another question from Mona. In the PACES exam of the MRCP, there is a collaboration between the two examiners of every station. Is it possible to collaborate human decisions with the AI decisions in assessment?
Very good question, Mona. See, it depends. Short answer, it depends on how much rigor would you want in your assessment system. There is always a possibility that instead of having two human assessors, you will have one AI and one human assessor. However, the long answer is if you look at how AI systems are being developed at the moment for scoring students, is based on the scores given by the humans. So the first step, as far as I know, and I've learned talking to and listening to experts, the first step is to feed in the data of your prior assessments, which has been done by humans to train your AI systems. And the quality assurance or the indicator to first approve the AI system is calibration. That AI learns to score as your humans were scoring before is the first step to quality check or approve any AI system. So that is a very intricate part and procedure of developing an AI system for student assessment and scoring. However, once you then implement that system, it will now depend on the rigor. So if you were already having two examiners and you want to replace one with AI, it produces efficiency and less resource. If you were only using one examiner, now using AI in that one examiner will not reduce your use of resources, will not make it efficient, but probably make it more rigorous because now probably you have two assessors, one human and one AI, because prior you were only dependent upon the human assessor. Or what you can do is you can then rely on the AI and then make some sampling to be counter checked by humans, which I said can range to me, it can range from 60% to 30%. More than 60%, it will just create a very resource intensive system, and then there is no point in using AI. And less than 30%, I'm still doubtful of the kind and quality and rigor of AI we have. Um, uh, I would not propose to go beyond 30%. So I think when institutions in their own contexts and for their own scenarios will make the decisions, they will have to think what is the problem they are trying to solve? Is it the quality problem or is it the efficiency problem? And that will give you the correct answers. Thank you.
We have one question from Nirmala. Assessment standards will also change. Can you elaborate on that?
Very interesting question. Probably the basic assessment standards will remain there, as I said. Standards of validity and reliability and objectivity will remain there. If they would become more rigorous, will be dependent on if AI will help us at large for most institutions and assessment systems ensure higher quality. And that is yet to be seen. Uh, the standards will change, newer standards will come in place, will be added because newer assessment methods and newer decision making methods will come into place. That is surely agreed. And it will depend on the newer assessment methods and newer decision making methods as to what kind of standards will then need to be added to the current ones. I agree with you.
There's a question from Kausar. There is an assumption in your response that human scoring is the correct one. How do you know who is more correct, the AI assessor or the human assessor?
Right. Very good question. Uh, for many AI models, we are dependent on currently are trained based on data and information generated by humans. So all AI we use today is trained on literature, information, and data produced by humans. So a lot of human biases have already gone into training of AI. However, when specific systems are being designed, what is ensured is that AI systems are being trained on quality data. There can be hidden biases there which may not be aware of. However, training itself largely has been dependent on human data. And yes, it has its own challenge. I can give you a few examples. In US, they started using an AI system to give tickets, traffic tickets. And when it was piloted, they found out that the AI system was giving more fines and tickets, fairly or unfairly, to Black people versus white people, to female drivers versus male drivers. And when they studied why did it happened because the data which was produced, the prior decisions made by humans, were based on these human biases. And that's exactly, you can just replicate this example to any situation, including assessments. And that is why I think Sakina has very clearly said if AI is being trained on poor data, it will result in poor decision making. If it is trained on quality data, where certain biases are hidden and not exposed and not explicit and not known to us yet, will produce decisions which will be seen as fair because the biases are not too many, they are still hidden and not known. So that's a challenge, and I agree with you.
Any other questions?
And I think Dr. Hasnain has added to my response, and that's a good practice. Dr. Hasnain, I know very well, is a good friend, a colleague, and is an expert in tech, technology in education and assessment. And he says that's why we use different data sets to train AI. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, that is always the case. We train in different data sets because it's in development, but we also have to keep an eye on the when it is in production, when it is used. One, there was I think a comment on exposing data, uh, personal data, or examination data. That's another risk that AI can expose the data. That is very important to keep in mind, especially in US. You cannot expose anybody's personal data. It's a federal offense. But AI um, can do that. So I attended an AI symposium. I work for University of Texas for health sciences. And so they had an AI symposium for medical schools and also the clinical. We have a hospital too. And I was listening, and that was one of the uh, biggest concern is exposing personal data of the patients, of the students, because it is a federal offense here. But that again we can train AI, but AI can train itself depending on the data that is being that is constantly changing. And so we have to constantly keep an eye and make sure we do the governance that is required to make sure nothing other than what we have trained it is being used. So it really scares me when I see AI used so much in everywhere. And also there is a fear of data centers using the resources, right? They're using more resources than we already have. And the more people who are jumping into AI and building, they're not thinking, they're not stopping because they're constantly competing with each other. But what happens if you can't support the data centers? Because AI is depending on data centers. For example, ChatGPT or Grammarly, any AI uses data centers, and the work it does and the speed it does on, that's what we have become accustomed to. We love putting things in ChatGPT and it will, format it and present it in a very beautiful language. but the work it does behind the scenes is very resource. It uses a lot of resource. So that's what we are using that we don't have. So what happens if it doesn't work? What happens if AI bubble crashes? That is what scares me a lot, especially for the doctors. Everything else I think we can manage, but what if the doctors are dependent on AI? What's going to happen? If the universities are dependent on AI, what's going to happen?
I
So,
agree. I
yeah.
agree.
So, yeah, but what happens if there's a blackout? Yes, absolutely. Because they are building data centers in Texas here that uh, they're using so much resources that people doesn't have electricity. They don't have water because it's using up water and electricity. So the residents are um, going against it. So if there is no data center, there is no AI. So then what's going to
And
happen?
that's why,
Yeah.
sorry, that's why now the data centers are being moved to the developing and underdeveloped countries on payment.
Yes.
And
Yes.
how fair and ethical is that?
I was reading, they said in Africa, a data center uses more resources than the whole country itself, one data center. So that's what we have to
Yes.
keep that in mind too. Any other questions, comments?
I think
That's
there
this.
are a lot of good comments on the chat
Yeah,
for us to
yeah,
read and deliberate and think. And
yeah.
and many of us yet don't have answers to many of the questions, believe me. Time will unfold.
And I think because of the competition, everyone wants to start using AI. They're forcing, especially in some of the companies here, we are forced to use AI to start training AI to do our work or to take
Wow.
over some of our burdens. But I have a friend. She's from Pakistan too. She's a child psychiatrist. So whatever discussion she has with the patients, the AI transcribes it. But when she said she reads it, she's like, I didn't say that. It's not me. What she is reading doesn't reflect who she is. So she is very uncomfortable. And she's like, I cannot put my name on what it's transcribing. So those are the things we have to really look, and we have to make sure we don't stop using our brains. That's going to be the scariest thing, if relying on AI and not using our expertise and our intelligence. Anybody? Questions, concerns, discussion? And thank you, Dr. Naveed. There are amazing messages for you on chat, thanking for your sharing your knowledge and giving us your time. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I really enjoyed the questions. So thank you.
Yeah. And everybody, please do put in your name for certificates. I only see 16 names, and we have about 30 plus attendees. So don't forget, please. If we don't have any other questions, concerns, we can end the session today. And we have another session coming up next Saturday from Professor Madalena, the one we couldn't have a couple of weeks ago. So please make sure you join. I will be sending out information soon. So we have two more this month. Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Naveed.
Looking
I
forward.
really, really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.